of skills, those which are mental abilities, mental capabilities with which one thinks, forms the opinion, thinks, and then looks the world with that particular perspective in which he or she has been oriented as a result of the observation of the world or taking the world view. So as I mentioned that yesterday we learned about the support service, which was an introduction, and then various types of support services, and then institutional arrangements, and also the support services with regard to the self-directed learning. So we discussed in detail who is self-directed learning, what is self-directed learning, who is self-directed learner, and how it is different from the other types of learners. So self-directed learning, we know that it makes the learner pace, place, and continue the study with his or her own place. So starting from that point of view, today we are going to the MAD block 2. This block is dedicated for learner support services with regard to development of various skills, various skills. So various skills means the learner is supposed to develop different types of skills, and as a result of the interaction, as a result of the efforts of the university in the area of student supports. So in fact, it means that there should be a system that works in such a way that it helps the development of various skills, and those skills will be very useful for the learners. So the institution must work in the area of developing skills. So very first skill is the cognitive skill. This skill has been described as the most important skill because it is that skill which helps us think, which helps us to look the world in a particular way, and also it helps us to acquire, to converge the knowledge through various mental processes, and it also helps us to identify the images, analyze sounds, recapitulate information, search. All sorts of mental tasks are performed with the help of this particular skill, which is the cognitive skill. So we also, cognition is basically, taking stock of something, to look at something, a kind of apprehension, a kind of knowledge, a kind of consciousness. We become conscious of certain things. So the cognition is basically stated to be two types. One is the presentative cognition, then another one is the representative cognition. So yeah, there was a small interruption. So we will continue. Aarti, good morning. Welcome.
Very good morning, sir.
Yeah. So we were talking about the various skills that are supposed to be developed with the institutional arrangements in the area of student supports, in the area of learner supports. So the very first, as I mentioned, that the very first skill is the cognitive skill. So cognition is to take stock, to take some kind of apprehension, to become conscious about certain happenings in the environment, and also to become alert, to become active, to take note of all these things happen in the through the as a result of cognition. So cognitive skills are those skills basically which helps us to function, various duties, various roles, and these are basically the mental abilities or mental capabilities. So there are variety of mental processes which are controlled by which are there with as a result of cognitive skills. These are the information processing, these are building the images, these are analyzation or analyzing the sounds, and also recapitulating information and searching information. So all these are mental tasks which are performed through the mental abilities or the capabilities, and the skill that helps to discharge all these tasks with the cognitive skill. So this is very important. So as we were saying, these are two types. One is the presentative skill, another one is the representative cognition. Cognitive skill or the representative. One is that remains present in our day-to-day activities. So another one is that represents an individual as having good thought processing ability, as a thinker, as a philosopher. All these are the as a result of the cognitive skills that are acquired by the learner. What we are discussing, in fact, is that the institution should provide an environment where all these skills, all these abilities are built into the mind of the learner. So this is the very first, and another aspect of the cognitive skill is that it has an ability to link with the present with the past, and also think about the future. That means it can help us consider certain things which will be happening as a result of the present implications or the present thought process. So in a way, it is the skill which primarily stated to be superior skills to animals, because the animals do not have this skills. They do react in a particular manner, but they cannot build something on this skill. So maybe they have memory, they have other skills, they have other abilities, but the human being are actually endowed with this particular higher level of cognitive skills, which one of the aspect of cognitive skill is the error and rectification. So error, because error, that means you realize something has gone wrong, and then you link it to the past, and the rectification means then you do not repeat it. So this not repeating is a very superior and higher mental ability. This comes as a result of cognitive skill, and the study, the environment should be such where the system is able to build this kind of skill in the learners. So there are a couple of types of the cognitive skills, and these are like perception. I think we all know what is perception. That is to make opinion about something. Then second skill is memory. That means we relate it to the past. Third one is the logical thinking. That means we think about the past. Then we analyze it in the contemporary situations terms, and then we decide whether to go about it or to end this particular stage. So this means logical thinking is involving the past, the present, and the future. Then it is a concentration. This is very important. You see, the animals do not have this kind of ability. Uh, they do not know where to focus attention, where not. But human being knows where to focus his or her attention. If one is in a classroom, then the focus of attention is the teacher, not the fellow students or the fellow mates. Similarly, if it is a kind of sermon, a small संभाषण सभा, pravachan, then our focus is the person who is delivering the sermon or who is delivering the speech. And the final one is the rational attitude. That means, as a result of cognitive skill that is built as a result of the perception, memory, logical thinking, and concentration, we come to a point where we think in a rational view, and our attitude is formed accordingly. The rational attitude is one of the very important aspects of the human beings, which is there as a result of a cognitive skill amongst the human beings. The very important aspect of the cognitive skill with regard to the distance learner, there is a very important role in the distance learning. Because in distance learning, we know that there are a lot of interactions, there are a lot of self-learning. So if you want to retain the self-learning, you must be able to, think critically, and also should be able to focus your attention on the sources of knowledge, types of knowledge, information that is available, that is there in the world. So, keeping this in view, I think the cognitive skill has a greater importance than other skills in the learner's study period, or during his or her study as a distance learner. Now we come to another skill which is very important, and this is the reading and writing techniques. Now we know that reading and writing techniques also improve as a result of cognitive skill. That means if we read something, then what should we read? Who will decide it? This will be decided if one has cognitive skill. How much to read, where to read, what to read. Where if there are 10 pages in one particular chapter, then which pages are more important, which are not. Or similarly, writing. This is very important because we are talking about the logical thinking. So if one has a logical thinking, one is a good writer. I mean, one can write properly. So the reading and writing techniques are also sharpened as a result of cognitive skills. So that means there, if there is a good cognitive skill, you can develop good reading habits. You can get familiarized with the course contents, and then you can cope with the stress. You can develop certain abilities whereby you are able to explore information from the sources other than the study material and so forth. And at the end of the day, the learner is also able to evaluate one's herself or himself. So, developing communication skills. Similarly, if one has a cognitive skill, one knows, what type of language one should use in a particular perspective, how one should talk to others, maybe to senior, to juniors, to ladies, to children, to teacher, to a politician. One has to know all these things. So this refinement in the communication comes or get developed only with the result of cognitive skill. So I think there is a small role for the Bloom's taxonomy in the cognitive skill, because he's talking about cognitive skills already. So it is cognitive, affective, and psychomotor skills. Psychomotor skills, we all know, if one has sharp cognitive skills, then his limbs also works very well. So they are self-directed. Those are self-directed as a result of the superior cognitive skills. Then the affective means attitudinal changes that are reflected in the personality of the student. It has 5 levels, and similarly the cognitive skill, which is knowledge based. So these 3 types of skills have been prescribed by Bloom's taxonomy. Also, taxonomy means transaction of the learning process, or the processes which are involved in the learning techniques of the distance learner. So if you look at this particular aspects, then what do? We know we come to an understanding that as a result of cognitive skills, we have better remembrance, we have better understanding, we know how to apply our accumulated knowledge, and we know how to analyze, we know how to evaluate, we know how to create. That means reading and writing and so forth. So, put together, this cognitive skill is a very important skill, and this skill is required to be developed amongst the distance learners, because if they are individualized learners, if they are independent learners, if they are autonomous learners, then all these skills, that means cognitive skill, affective skills, and the psychomotor skills, have to be very, very sharp with the distance learner. So the these skills should be allowed to develop. Such type of support services should be arranged by the distance open and distance learning system or institutions, as we read yesterday, the institutional arrangements for support services. So that means the institution should engage such counselors who can help in developing these skills. Institution must organize seminars, conferences, conclave, and so forth, so that all these skills are developed amongst the distance learners. So it is primarily mind mapping. So that means all the activities that takes place in the mind are in the aura or in the gamut of cognitive skills. So what uh, the students are able to map things. That means they should be able to become conscious, gaze at the consequences of the things, and then they should be able to make a roadmap for themselves as a result of cognitive evaluation of cognitive skill at a particular point of time. So they should be able to distinguish between the various components of knowledge, and then find out the best knowledge, the best information, the most pertinent information, the most logical information, the most subtle information that is required for the student's development. So, in a nutshell, we can say the cognitive skill is the skill which is there to sharpen the mental capabilities or abilities, and then mental abilities helps one to think, to critically look, to form a perception, to think logically, to think about future, to remember, to apply, to understand, and all sorts of activities that are performed as a result of mental ability. So now we will go to the next unit, which is the very important unit, and it is dedicated for studying deeply about the reading and writing skills. So we have first gone through the cognitive skills, and cognitive skill is the primary skill, and if one has good cognitive skills, then one will have good study skills also. So but we will see in it, like I mentioned, that the cognitive skill is like perception, logical thinking, attitude, remembering, applying, and so forth. So similarly, if you look at the study skills, so study skills is required to study better. But how to study better? What is the meant by the studying better? Because everyone studies, everyone likes to study better. So how it is different? So basically, it is not, the study skill is not purely to think about. That is a part of the cognitive skill. But this is the skill which help an individual reach the optimum level of understanding and thereby acquire knowledge through his or her own effort. So that means study skill is required to optimize the understanding and the acquiring the knowledge as a result of study. So study skill is to study in such a way that one is able to improve one's understanding and thereby learn more, or learn the best, which is the accumulation of knowledge. So very first issue in the study skill is to how to study. That is the question. Yes, you study to acquire better knowledge, to become more uh, capable to understand the things, and also to obtain to achieve the desired results. But how to improve the study skills? So study skills are improved as a result of the very first one effort with as a result of which we improve the study skills. That is to schedule our study. That is to schedule the study. What is the scheduling of study? You have to make priorities. What to study, what not to study, what should be given more preference, what should be given the least preference. So we all know we have different subjects, we have different blocks, we have different courses, we have different blocks, we have different units. We know that all the units are important, all the blocks are important, all the courses are important, but at the same time, we also know and we consciously or unconsciously we give preference to certain blocks, certain units, and certain courses. Um, Perhaps one may not like to accept it, but one does it. All of us do it. So that is very important that we should make a schedule as to what to be read when, how much, what not, why not, like that. Similarly, we also decide uh, when to study. So that means there should be a guidance to the learner that at what time one should study. But we know if in the open and distance learning it is a contradictory. Yes, I do agree that when we say it is an autonomous learning, it is an individualized learning, it is an independent learning. But again, there must be a kind of arrangement where the learner should be able to decide that when I should study. But this skill must come to the learner and then where to study. It is the decision of the learner where to study. See. But at the same time, we should also be able to provide an environment which should be telling or which should be giving some hints to the learner that yes, this will be an ideal place for one to study. What is study? This is the question. So study is to think about something. We read and then we think. So it is in a way you read, and then it also strengthens your mental ability because the study is meant to give you proper understanding and better knowledge. So if you can decide, if you can think better, that means you have thinking skills. So there should be thinking skills, there should be cognitive skill, and then if you study, then you have better understanding, you have better knowledge. So in a way, the institution, the distance learning must give the learner an opportunity as to how to think, how to become skilled thinker. So there's a technique which is SQR technique. So SQR is basically it has 4 5 types. So normally we say survey, question, and read, recite, and review. These are the primary activities that are related to the study skills. So first of all, survey. You look at the text, then you question. You put question why it is so. Then there are 3 R's. 3 R's are read, recite, and review. So it will change. Maybe somewhere it is the remarks, somewhere it is the remember, recapitulate, and so forth also. So initially there are 5 steps, strategies, which is appropriate for all subjects. Why should you study? Where to study? When to study? What not to study? What is to be given more time? So this is all that is decided by the SQ3R technique. These are 5 techniques. So that is survey, question, read, recite, and review. So similarly, there is another aspect of study skill, that is to take note. So if you are able, if one can take note, that means one has understood, because as a result of understanding only one can take note. Take note. Taking note means, marking the important things and maybe writing on your own notebook or something. So similarly, highlighting the text. This is another technique that we often apply during study. So what do we do by highlighting? We highlight the central idea. We highlight the technical terms. We highlight that which is important. So this is a kind of technique which is related to the study skill. So then one of the aspects of the study skill is the effective listening. Study means, yes, one is writing, but at the same time reading. But when we read, sometimes we do not read. Sometimes we only listen to somebody speaking, somebody saying. So if somebody is saying, then what do we do? We search for meaning as to what is being conveyed by this discussion, by this sermon, by this preaching. मान लीजिए कोई कोई बहुत बड़े जो दार्शनिक हैं वो व्याख्यान दे रहे हैं, तो व्याख्यान की जो बातें होंगी हम उनसे कुछ ना कुछ अर्थ निकालने की कोशिश करेंगे। तो वो है कि जब हम किसी को सुनते हैं तो हम उसकी बातों की में से सेंस निकालना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि बहुत सारी बातें हमारे सिर के ऊपर से निकल जाती हैं, समझ में नहीं आती हैं. So that means we try to search for meaning. So that search for meaning is something that is part of the study skill, that is part of the skill which is related to drive out the meaning. Study skill means to sharpen your understanding and to gain more knowledge. Similarly, we also do the same thing with study skills, that is note taking. While we have deliberations, so if we listen carefully, we try to make sense, we take note, we focus on it, and at the same time, we have to show our interest. And we know, as I mentioned just now, our focus is the speaker, he or she, whosoever is delivering the speech, whosoever is moderating the discussion, and so forth. So, one very important thing is mentioned here, that don't be judgmental. Means we should not form opinion about a person on the basis of one's lecture, of one's presentation, because might be the representation is in different perspective. The person might have different perspective, but his or her presentation is also shaped by the environment, by the place where one is speaking, or the purpose for which one is speaking. So as I said, there are 5 effective techniques in the reading skills. So those are survey, question, read, write, review, and recite and review. So what if we go a little ahead, then there are 6 techniques also. These are 6, that is called SQ4R. So this is survey, question, read, recite, and review remains there, but then 1R is added, that is 4R, that is the reflect. So as I just now told you, that survey is to map something, question is to question somebody's validity, read is to reading, and reflect is new dimension here. Reflect means to ultimately translate it into one's behavior. So that is the reflecting. That is effective characteristic of the learning. So similarly, if we move little more further, we have 5 R's. So survey, question will remain the same. Then read, recite, and review remains the same, but we added reflection. Then we have another technique which is the record. So the one of the important aspects of our reading skills is to record. That means we should be able to retain. That is retaining the focus, retaining the important aspects of the discussion. So then we have another which is uh, 5R. So 5R is for the survey question. Then we come to write. So write and read. So read we have already, reflect we have already, record we have already, review we have already, recite we have already. So here another dimension which is 5R means SQ plus uh, 5R. So 5R that begins with the writing. So put together this is 8 plus 7 plus write 8. So there are 8. That is survey, question, write, read, reflect, record, recite, and review. So this is 5 SR techniques. Now this is about the reading. So you know that equally important is the writing. So without writing, we cannot come to evaluation stage. So how to write? This is very important. So first of all, we should have a target to identify the target. Means you should be able to identify the topic. What you would like to take for writing. You know, what should be the subject. Whether the teacher is asking the students to write, and the student has to provide certain question answers to that have been asked by the teacher, and accordingly. So first of all, one has to know what is the target. Means whether the target is the student or the teacher. If in case of student, it could be the teacher, then the student will write differently. If the target is parents, student will write differently. If the target is general public, the student will write differently. So that means there has to be a clarity of target. Then one has to decide the contents, and one has to create the outline. Outline means if it is a small letter, maybe 200 words. If it is an essay, maybe 1000 words. If it is a pressy, maybe 50 lines. Also. So one has to create an outline. If it is a personal letter, if it is a presentation, if it is a report, or what is the outline? Means a report may be 1 page, a presentation may be 3 pages, a speech may be 5 pages. Or if one is writing a story, accordingly to decide. Then one has to be very clear about not repeating the mistakes. So that means to be free from the mistakes, one has to write one's attempt quite a few times so that those things are avoided, and then proofread it. This is something which we don't do about our writings. But we should do it. We should read our writing once more before it is submitted for evaluation, maybe to the teacher, maybe to the higher authorities. Maybe it is a project report, maybe it is a thesis. In your case, it is term and examination. Before we finish our term and examinations, and before we submit our question answer sheet, it is always better to go through it once. So similarly, there are communication skills. This is very important. Communication skills are very important. What goes into becoming a good listener? That means you have to listen attentively. Only you can communicate properly if you have listened properly. Sometimes what happens in a spur of stimulus, we see somebody speaking and we jump, to the well, and then we start speaking. In fact, we speak on many occasions. We question the speaker on those points which he or she has not mentioned at all. So
So
sometimes,
I have one question.
yes,
Do IGNOU have Divyang students with them?
IGNOU have
Divyang students, physically handicapped or inner students?
yes. We have a lot of our courses in the Braille mode,
Okay,
in the
that was
talking,
I was to
in
ask.
the talk books style. Those are available if one has a need of that kind of study material, notes. Then you can request for talk mode. We have one National Center for Disability Studies, NCDS.
Okay, so Braille and all are
Hmm.
arranged over it.
Lot many options are there, Aarti. And if you wish
Okay.
to explore it more, you can write to the director NCDS.
So in our this thing in course, it has not been mentioned anywhere. No? MAD or
I
health
think
sector.
we mentioned briefly just about no, I mentioned about PWDs, people with disabilities yesterday. That institution makes arrangement for people with disabilities, like ramps, like housing them on the ground floor, making special
Okay.
restrooms for them. But I did, of course, forget to mention that there is a facility for students who are unable to, not able to read the printed
But
material.
still, but still, I think there are limitations कि coverage हो पाता है क्या सर बहुत
I,
जैसे
I, I do agree. Actually, I don't
हाँ,
have much. I have some idea because I was associated with for a small period with this project. But I am not in a position to tell you how many courses are actually available that way. But one thing is very certain that there are lot many courses which are available in Braille, also available in talk books style.
that's good.
Yeah, so those are available. So as I mentioned, the National Center for Disability Studies is the coordinating center which has developed certain softwares also, and we also have NCIDE, National Center for Innovation in Distance Education. NCIDE. One is NCDC, NCDS, National Center for
So
Disability Studies.
IGNOU is collaborated with that or
No, these
it is
centers are
a
housed in IGNOU itself.
अच्छा अच्छा okay sir
Another center is the National Center for Innovation in Distance Education. These centers are
NSI
working.
okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
can you name it? I will be finding it out.
oh, yeah, these are NCDS.
NCDS. Okay.
One,
And
and the
another one?
second center is NCIDE,
NCIDE. Okay, sir.
National Center for Innovations in Distance Education.
Okay, sir. So where is it located? In which
They should be able
study
to
center?
give you more information as to how many courses are available in Braille, and apart from Braille, what are the other. I remember once, discussing talk books with
Mm-hmm.
them. So they were working about 4 5 years back. I had an interaction. So at that time they were working on developing talk books.
Okay, sir.
So I hope by now they must have come up with certain other alternatives also. So then we come to the communication skills. These are equally important, and there are certain few minor observations. As I mentioned, one should be listening carefully. Then uh, you should also read the speaker. I'm basically also translation studies person. So how do
Okay.
we translate a speaker? We read the person.
Yeah.
What are
Read
gestures?
and understand. Yeah.
Read and then speak about what he or she is thinking. So you have to read the
Definitely.
changes that comes on the faces of a person. That means one is putting emphasis. Sometimes one is not able to speak, only stammers, but then that all stammering is also to be translated. So this is important note that reading, one should be in a position to read the speaker, how one is going to react. Then
So
this is very.
do इग्नू have channels like जैसे कि दूरदर्शन पे मूक बोर्ड के न्यूज आते हैं, इस टाइप का कुछ चैनल वगैरह भी है?
यस, ज्ञान दर्शन जो है, इसमें ज्ञान दर्शन इज ए 24 आवर एजुकेशनल चैनल.
ओके, तो उसमें उन लोगों के लिए है कुछ सुविधा दी गई है?
हाँ हाँ हाँ, बहुत सारे कोर्सेज को उसमें, हमारा ही उसमें लगभग 15 से 16 घंटे का जो टेलीकास्ट है वो इग्नू के प्रोग्राम्स का है, इग्नू के कोर्सेज का है. और उसमें आपको PGDDE, MADE, PGDHE, हायर एजुकेशन, ट्रांसलेशन, जेंडर स्टडीज, डेवलपमेंटल स्टडीज, ह्यूमैनिटीज, साइंस,
अच्छा,
सारे के प्रोग्राम्स मिलेंगे आपको.
ओके सर. नहीं, आई वाज टारगेटिंग दैट दिव्यांग ग्रुप ना स्पेसिफिकली, उनका क्या वो मूक और बोर्ड जैसे एक न्यूज आता है ना
हाँ हाँ
दूरदर्शन पे, तो क्या क्या उनको भी वैसे ही ट्रांसलेट करके उनको
हाँ,
पढ़ाने का, उनको नॉलेज
बहुत
देने
सारे
का
जो हमारे
सुविधा
जो
दिया जाए?
बहुत सारे हमारे जो प्रोग्राम्स हैं उसमें you will find speaker, at the same time you will find an interpreter.
ओके,
Hmm.
दैट्स
So you explore our Gyan Darshan. I think sometimes its schedule is quite interesting to look at, and then maybe you can find out certain programs of your interest.
या.
And then, like, it is very important to to make eye contact with the speaker. Some we always shirk about making eye contact, but we should do it. Then we can communicate well. So then we have to take notes, etc., and so all sorts of things. So what it does actually, uh, it's a basically visual learning, auditory learning, and tactile learning. So visual learning, we look at a person, then we try to grasp those visual reactions. Similarly, if we look at a wall, if there are paintings, there are diagrams, then we learn from them also. Auditory learning is basically listening to somebody speaking. Then tactile learning, tactile learning, kinesthetic,
टेक्सटाइल.
tactile
या
learners.
काइनेसिस.
That is,
काइनेसिस.
yeah,
काइनेसिस इज यूजिंग सेंसरी organ, I think, ना?
yeah. Kinesthetic learners are the learners who learns from hands-on practice. So
ओके.
if they are participating in some physical activity, they learn from that. This is basically kinesthetic learning, is a direct learning by doing something, not by listening to something, by looking at something, but by, say for example, we see
These
the
are
fire
active learners.
burning. Child does it most often. He sees the child, the fire burning, and then try to put his or her hands and then learn how
Yeah,
does it
active
work.
learning.
So this
This
is
will be active learning.
basically a hands-on learning, direct learning. So similarly, we have the various styles of learning: logical, social, solitary, and so forth. So why we are discussing this? This is the very interesting phenomenon question. We are discussing all these things because learners in the distance education has all these situations with him or her more than the conventional learner, because one is at own study, an individual study, independent study, isolated study, autonomous study. So he doesn't have many occasions to study from teacher, from classroom,
So
from peer.
what solitary style is there? ये क्या
So all these
अकेले रह के
things,
सीखना?
in a solitary environment, all these things are more important to be built as skills. Only then one can make optimum use of the study, or rather one can study optimally through all these practices. Because if one doesn't do it, then there will not be many occasions to learn. So one has to, do it. There is importance of time management. We all know this is one skill which is also there in the study pattern. So we have to have a time management. Means we should not keep on reading only one blog for indefinite period and forget about others. So we have to prioritize. We have to set a goal. We should have a plan. And you see, then we cannot always make too many plans. So we have to have a plan and stick to it. And then we have to prepare a strict timetable. That means we have to really decide that in the morning I will study this, because teacher will not be there to tell, or teacher will not be there, he will not be there in the class, or she will not be there in the class. So where teacher will tell, yes, haven't you studied this, you study this, you study that. So this all has to be decided by the learner himself or herself. So this is all about the study skills. So study skill is primarily skill which is related to bring about better understanding and more refined knowledge. So we listen to somebody, we observe somebody, we develop our communication skills. So there are a lot of facets through which we develop our study skills. We write and we learned about SQ 4 hours, SQ 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. So that means there are five skill, 5, 6, 7, and 8 skills at different stages. So those are like survey, question, then write, read, recite, recall, uh, it's, uh, and so forth. So all these skills are there. Different types of skills are there. So these help actually in the bringing about better understanding, and also resulting in better or optimal knowledge. So now we come to actually reading and writing skills, because these were associated with cognitive aspect of skills and the study skills. But ultimately with study, what we do, we read and write. So if you look at the reading skills, these are slightly, study has been expanded in this particular unit 3. So unit 3 will be discussing the reading process. So what goes into the reading process? So there are different stages. The very first stage is perception and word recognition. I think they are talking about from a very basic level. But we know that by reading we develop a perception, and then we also try to uh, relate the words. Sometimes what we see on the paper is not the meaning is not same as that on the word level. So we try to build a better or a higher meaning out of the words. So that is word recognition. It doesn't mean that we are only trying to recognize the words. If it is written Utkarsh, what it means. So that doesn't mean excellent or height or whatever it is, superior or the top level. So we have to relate it to the context. Similarly, there's a
Yes.
comprehension.
In
We
what
have,
sense it has been written?
yeah, what actually we are trying to bring, relate it, and then we try to build contextual meaning. So that is the word recognition as to what purpose this particular word has been used. So then we have comprehension, and similarly we have evaluation and reading and application. So we have already learned about developing skills, but we will briefly discuss. And today I will also be, so the very first one is about uh, the stages of learning. So what are the different stages? First of all, as I mentioned, we form a perception, and then we try to recognize the words. Then comprehension. Comprehension is also understanding. I think you know. how do we comprehend the things. So we are given a text, and then we try to understand, and then after going through it, we try to bring about a central idea, and then evaluation and reaction and application. So comprehension is little is basically for the creative reading. Uh, so it is not creative reading in terms of creative literature, but it is a reading which allows us to form our own views, our own opinion, and enlarge our thinking skills. Like you can bring about divergent views, and also you can become interpretative, and also there's a scope for critical thinking. So that means so comprehensive or comprehension is an exercise which allows us to think creatively, amalgamate our own views, and also thereby add our critical thinking into it, and then become interpretative. Interpretative means we can bring divergent views and look at its pros and cons, and add new meanings to it. Not definitely it may always be correct, but you can at least say that yes, I think about this particular problem in this particular way. Reading is also evaluation. I mean, there's a part of evaluation in. So, what is the evaluation in reading? This is very interesting. What you do various sources of information, and also what as an author, as a writer, we always think about our characters, our patras, हमारे जो जिनके बारे में हम लिख रहे हैं, and then we examine those, we evaluate those, and then write about them. We make statements about the different characters, about different entities. We describe them. We may not be able to, may not be doing it correctly all the time, but sometimes it is, if it is a creative literature, most of it is our imagination, most of it is our own building or concoction. So we do it that way. So we evaluate and then we react. So react means we try to justify our character because we have made certain statement, or if we read something, then we try to make certain comments on the reading itself. That means we evaluate the reading, we evaluate the character, the plot, the treatment of the plot, and then we make a small comment about it. So that is the evaluation. So then we apply this understanding. So similarly, so if we will come to the same point again, SQ3, that is survey question, read, recall, review. So then we come to 4R. So there we have added a small more element which is to write, and so forth. So all these are there. One point which I would like to focus our attention for maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, because today I will be winding up the session earlier. I have some meeting there. So the writing process, this is very important. I think more than in the reading, as you have to make a schedule, you have to prioritize, you have to make a timetable, you don't have to put off the things, otherwise it gets overloaded. And then there are three SQ3R, 4R, 5R skills, those can be applied. Very important skill is the writing skill. Writing skill is one skill which needs a very serious thought. So the very first thing is the planning. I think we mentioned briefly that we should identify the plot, we should identify the target, we should identify the purpose, then the content, and so forth. How do we do that? So we have to plan writing. So plan means, first of all, we have to think about a subject as to what we are choosing for writing. Then we have to think the format in which we will be writing, whether we are doing creative writing, or we are doing essays or critical writing, or we are doing criticism, or we are doing play, drama, or writing the developmental literature, or writing the administrative literature, whatever it is. You have to do all these thinking and then plan what my subject is, what is the format, what style I will be using, and then what am I supposed to write. See, this is very different. Subject is different, style is different, format is different. What I am supposed to write means, but I will write. Say, for example, it is critical writing. Say, for it is the format is essay type, uh, style is running style, or maybe. Sorry, I had interruption due to somebody who called me. So, so it is very important that we plan our writing, and then the next stage is translating. What is translating? Can you tell me what is translating?
Translation from one language to another language.
Yes, true. That is about proper translation. Here we are talking differently. Here translating means how to translate your ideas into writing.
ओके, तो फॉन्ट में भी ट्रांसलेट होता है क्या? फॉन्ट चेंज करना?
किससे?
अच्छा, तो यहाँ पे एग्जैक्टली राइटिंग का मतलब क्या है? हैंड रिटन और राइटिंग ऑन द
No,
स्क्रीन और
whatever writing you do it on computer, whatever. But what do you write? Because
ओके, आउट ऑफ
ideas,
आवर स्किल, राइट?
no, your
कहीं भी
ideas.
लिखना अपने अपने अनुसार, अपने स्किल के अनुसार, राइट?
नहीं 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 नहीं, थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट है यहाँ। आपके अपने आइडियाज होते हैं ना।
उसको पुट
आप
करना।
बहुत कुछ सोचते हैं अपने मन में। मान लीजिए कि हम लिख रहे हैं खरगोश। एक
हम्म,
मैं कहता हूँ एक कहानी है शहरी खरगोश।
हम्म,
तो उसमें क्या होगा, मैं किसके बारे में इमेजिनेशन करूंगा? खरगोश के बारे में। लेकिन मैं लिख
हम्म,
किसके बारे में रहा हूँ? एक शहरी व्यक्ति के बारे में।
हम्म,
तो मेरे आइडियाज क्या होंगे? वो आइडियाज होंगे मन में कि मैं एक करेक्टर को बिल्ड करूंगा।
हम्म।
सो इट इज ट्रांसलेटिंग द आइडियाज।
सिमिलर टू जैसे पंचतंत्र में होता है,
हाँ हाँ हाँ,
जो कि एक
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
मॉरल स्टोरी है और
हाँ,
ऐसे
तो वो
ठीक है
मॉरल
सर,
वो प्रीच करना चाहते हैं, लेकिन प्रीच वो करेक्टर के थ्रू करते हैं।
राइट, इजी बना के कि इट विल बी
हाँ,
कम्युनिकेटेड टू द लर्नर।
बहुत सारे करेक्टर्स देंगे, ये करेंगे, तो इट इज कॉल्ड द ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ आइडियाज।
To develop an essay, sir, I think.
It is a translation means basically to convert something into something. एक्चुअल ट्रांसलेशन में हम क्या करते हैं? सोर्स टेक्स्ट को टारगेट टेक्स्ट में कन्वर्ट कर देते हैं, राइट? एक भाषा के पार्ट को दूसरी भाषा की जो स्क्रिप्ट है उसमें डाल देते हैं, यही करते हैं ना। लेकिन यहाँ बोल रहा है कि अपने आइडियाज को राइटिंग में तब्दील कर देना। आइडिया तो दिमाग में उपजते हैं ना,
ठीक है, उसको ट्रांसलेट करो।
उसको ट्रांसलेट करके, मतलब कन्वर्ट करके वर्ड्स में डाल देना। विचार को शब्दों में तब्दील करना इज ट्रांसलेशन। Same is then next stage is reviewing or editing. This is very important in writing. We do not do it. As I mentioned just now, most often what we do, we straight away present our ideas, our writings to somebody else, and then we always realize, oh, this was the mistake. I should have reviewed it. So it is very important to review, means to have a look before submission or editing. So editing and review is almost the same type of activities. So those activity the things are very important, or very important stages in the writing. Another issue is approaching a problem. So first of all, one should know what is a problem. You know problem? What is a problem? Problem is not
Problem is
a problem is not always what we say difficulty. See, problem is an issue. Okay. Problem is primarily an issue, and we would like to resolve the issue. So, how do we do that? So, it says having faith in cause and effect relationship means if there is an issue, there is definitely cause to it. So we
root
should
cause.
look for the cause. What has caused this issue? So
It
instead of
must
looking
find the
at
root cause. Must find the root
हाँ
cause.
चलो रूट
क्या
कॉज
है
बोल
कारण?
सकते हैं कि हम इसका रूट कॉज ढूंढते हैं, फिर उसको ये देखना है आपको कि ये जो प्रॉब्लम बनी है क्या इसका कोई पर्पस था या
हाँ,
क्यों ये बनी प्रॉब्लम. So we look for the cause and we look for the objectivity of it. How this has come into. Then there is very important stage which is empirical evidence. Look at the entire world around you. How the problems have been solved, how such issues have been solved previously. If you can do that, definitely there will be 100,000 examples of this similar nature where the problems have been solved, where the issues have been resolved. So look at the emphasis on the empirical evidences. मीन्स इम्पेरिकल का मतलब जो डे टू डे एक्सपीरियंस में चीज़ें आती हैं, वर्ल्ड व्यू में, मतलब सांसारिक व्यवहार में जो चीज़ें आती हैं उन पर अगर आप
इसमें दिया हुआ ग्रेप वाइन्स वगैरह का दिया हुआ है.
नहीं आप देखेंगे ना कि उसी तरह की प्रॉब्लम हर आदमी फेस करता है.
Definitely.
तो आप देखिए अपने व्यवहार में कि लोग कैसे उन चीज़ों से डील किए हैं. तो जब आप लगेगा कि किसी व्यक्ति ने उसका समाधान इस तरह से निकाला, आप भी उस चीज़ को अप्लाई कर सकते हैं. And then being receptive to the novel ideas. हो सकता है कि प्रॉब्लम में नया आइडिया हो. इन ट्रांसलेशन वी ऑफन से देयर इज ए प्रॉब्लम ऑफ अनट्रांसलेटेबिलिटी, मतलब उसको ट्रांसलेट नहीं किया जा सकता. लेकिन हम ये भी मानते हैं कि इफ देयर इज नो अनट्रांसलेटेबिलिटी देयर विल बी नो गुड ट्रांसलेशन एट ऑल. सो व्हेन देयर इज ए चैलेंज देयर इज ए बेटर रिजल्ट. डू यू एग्री?
Yes, sir.
Then critical thinking. We are talking about critical thinking. Whether it is study skill, whether it is cognitive skill, whether it is reading skill, writing skill, all that is required is critical thinking. And all that we are looking at as a result of all this is creating the critical skills among our learners. So if we are able to bring about the critical thinking, definitely nothing is beyond their capacity. So with this, I will conclude my session because I have to rush for another meeting.
Sure, sir.
So I think we had good interaction and it was very nice. You made a lot of observations. So we will meet tomorrow. So be a little early, maybe at 11, so that today also I thought we would do. But then we will discuss the next important issue of learner supports. We will discuss the time management, schedules, and
Stress management.
yeah,
Stress management.
stress is very important, of course, we all know. So we will discuss all these things tomorrow. And with this, I take leave of you and wish you a good day. Right?
Yes.
So we have especially stress. We will discuss it from different perspectives.
Yeah,
Thank
block.
you. Thank you very much. I have to rush.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, dear. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, RC Chandigarh. I am winding a little early because I have another meeting scheduled. Thank you very much.